curveballs. Sometimes the greatest things in our life can throw them right at us. You might be hanging out with a family member and all of a sudden they have to go to the hospital because of some condition. But sometimes those curveballs aren't family or even medical. Sometimes they're curveballs in something that you'd think has been put down to an exact science by now. Join me today on Everdeath News as we discuss my top 3 or top 4 reasons as to why I think BFA isn't the greatest expansion. Let's talk about the first thing on the list, and probably the thing that hits closest to home for me. The tier set changes. Now, for obvious reasons, tier sets were changed. Blizzard said that the main reason was that people were going, for example, to Tomb of Sargeras to get tier sets and 4-piece bonuses that were better than Antorus. I only use that as an example because one of our Resto Druids, our only Resto Druid, she wanted to go and do Tomb to get the 4-piece for the Resto Druid because it was better than the 4-piece Antorus set for the Resto Druid. Now, if all they did was remove the tier bonuses, I would have been completely fine with it. But everyone's over here like, oh, actually, you know, it's a good thing that they're going to get rid of tier sets because of the things that they've listed. Meanwhile, here I am, running around like a headless chicken with my arms flailing around like a maniac, screaming, no, you fools! It's only going to make it worse, because even though, yes, getting rid of the tier sets, or at least the tier bonuses, is a completely justifiable action, they also got rid of something that actually gave each class something unique. The diversity of the tier armor. Something that went back as far as Vanilla WoW. If you went into Vanilla WoW and you, say, did Molten Core on a Priest, you had a different set of 6 pieces of armor than, say, a Warlock or a Mage, because you all had a different look. They want to preach class fantasy and theme, yet they take away the one thing that gives you the most of it. I fully believe that WoW is a good game when it's made right, and time is taken to make the game, you know, both enjoyable and understandable and entertaining, and the developers take the time to actually consider the consequences of what they might go and do. Instead of this just going and saying, well, you know, we're gonna lop off tier bonuses, don't worry about making anything that looks unique, guys. Like, that's stupid. I don't know who at the design team thought that was a smart idea. And it was an unnecessary prune. This has been in the game since Vanilla WoW, the OG, 14 plus years ago. And all of a sudden, well, you know, we're not going to give unique armor sets. This would have been the perfect raid tier to give us something that looks absolutely unique. If not absolutely unique, take the old year sets we have now and change them up a bit. Yeah, cool, it's Ulduar. Har har har, very funny. No. Like, we don't need more sets that look like Ulduar. If we want Ulduar sets, we can go back and farm Ulduar sets. The theme of corruption and, you know, thick, viscous fluid and all this other gore-themed stuff is heavily there in the raid. And yet we get this very pristine, very elegant, very nice-looking armor and weaponry to obtain from the bosses. There's a weapon called the Regurgitated Purifier's Flame Staff, and yet it looks like it has no wear and tear on it. It was inside the belly of a monster with caustic fluid, you know, for stomach acid. Like, it should be worn, it should be nasty looking, it should be sickly and festering. This item that I got, the pristine looking, like, Regurgitated Purifier's Flame Staff, should not look pristine if it's been in the belly of a fucking boss called the Fetid Devourer. It's part of what really frustrates me, because this raid, they could have gone with a theme other than just, oh, it's Titans again. They could have gone with a legitimately awesome theme of, let's take this raid and let's take all this armor and have blood dripping off of it, or have it, like, have chunks of pulsating moss or whatever that fungal stuff is out of the Underrot, that really white and red theme of the Underrot, because that's essentially what Gahoon is. Gahoon is the embodiment of the old god's desire to corrupt and control and consume, so having armor that's infected would be awesome as hell, but unfortunately, either through time constraints or, you know, through lack of design, lack of interest in the design. It's the first raid, but still, it's the first foray, and already I feel bored from the options. I'm not going to want to go back and farm the armor that's there because it just looks bland. Moving on to my second argument, Warfronts. Now, before we begin on the Warfronts, let me just say that Blizzard is a company with over 14 years of experience. You'd think they'd have the RTS/MMO/RPG and loot thing down to a science. even if other companies, or other parts of the same company, I should say, other development teams worked on stuff like Diablo and Overwatch, you would expect most of the teams at Blizzard to at least communicate with each other every now and again and give each other ideas. And if they don't, I think it'd be a really good idea to, take some ideas from the Overwatch team. So, knowing that, Warfronts. Something that's been hotly debated as being a catch-up mechanic 3 weeks into the expansion. Whether or not you believe that is true is up to you, but the fact stands that Warfronts are a easy, no-risk, high-reward piece of trivial content that gives you 340 plus gear, and every 2 weeks gives you one piece of 370 plus guaranteed gear. And that's not even considering the world boss in Arathi, after you do the little scenario and you hold it for the 1 week while the Alliance or the Horde are contributing, where you can get another piece of 370 gear. Plus. The plus meaning it can Titan Forge and go up as high as probably 380, 385. Essentially what happens, for those of you who still have not done Warfronts, is you got a scenario, you go in, you start your little scenario on a flagship or on a gunship, you drop down after a minute of prep time, you take out a mini boss, you secure your hold, and then Eitrig, as it is this week, tasked us with going out and getting iron and lumber.
And bring me some iron and lumber.
From the iron mine and the lumber mill, which required us to kill 2 more raid bosses and then cap the flags. Moving on from there, we gathered iron and lumber to build up our resources and our bases, unlocking things like the barracks, the Shrine of Storms, which gives you an individual buff, and in some cases, a group-wide buff. And then, eventually, it culminated in us going and beating down Stromgarde. That's it. That's all you do. Your end goal is to kill Danath Trollbane, as he was this week. Apparently, there's an achievement for defeating also Muradin and Turalian, so it must mean that there are other commanders than just Eitrig and Danath Trollbane. The other problem, however, with this is that you are doing low-risk, high-reward content that you really can't lose. There is no risk of you losing this content. Is it nice for the casuals? Yes, but it also is a dangerous thing to put in right before the Mythic race, because the Mythic Uldir race could be a little skewed by that gear. So unless they put in a system where, they can only use a certain level of armor to qualify, which I don't think they can do that, it's going to be a skewed race, and we'll likely see, well, I say we'll likely see someone other than Method win, but it's probably going to be Method again. Maniacs. Power to them. I mean, if you want to do Mythic raiding, go for it. Shit, that is out of my comfort zone, though. My anxiety says no, sir. Also, another thing to note for the third topic is the decision to have secondary stats matter less than primary stats. To which, for the first 2 weeks of the expansion, our blood DK was less than thrilled. Rune regeneration, or the thing that you rely on to live as a blood DK so that you can generate stuff like Bone Shield and generate runic power for death strikes, is your runes. Your runes generate faster the more haste you have. I have statistical evidence on my 110 monk, which I'll put up on screen now, versus my 120 higher item level, albeit, Warlock. Now, granted, Warlocks really don't need haste unless you're playing Affliction, but at the same time, just look at the difference. Again, this is another system that they took out that's been in the game since vanilla. You actually had more secondary stats that you had to pay attention to, things like your weapon skill, things like expertise, hit chance. Nowadays, you have a few major ones: Mastery, Crit, Haste, Verse, and for some tanks, Avoidance and Dodge and Parry. But for the most part, it falls down to Haste, Mastery, and Critical Strike, with a little bit of versatility here and there. The problem here is that it's more of a system that didn't need to be changed. Of course, well, let's appeal to the casual players. I don't want to be called out for being an asshole to the casuals, because I don't like to think I am. I like to think of myself as a casual raider. But at the same time, there's an argument to be made that all the content that's there and the stuff that they're taking away is appealing to casual players. They've added in Warfronts, which are super easy to do and don't require any effort. They're taking away the importance of secondary stats, meaning that you have to min-max less. Some of us really like to min-max, Blizz, and I miss my 20% plus haste. I miss my 30% plus crit on a damn Destruction Warlock. A lot of people like Heals v Babyface, or Heals v Babyface, I swear I can speak today, and Bellular have said similar things, that the expansion's really gotten a lukewarm reception from a lot of people. which isn't something you want your multi-million-dollar franchise to have happen. It makes me really question whether or not the thing I said about Activision not having too much of a say in what Blizzard does because they're mostly autonomous, it actually makes me wonder if I was wrong and they have more than I gave them credit for. You know, what if they're telling Blizzard that they have to have it out by a certain deadline? Well, it's hard to believe nowadays, but back in the day, Blizzard never really adhered to a deadline. They did their own thing. And, you know, if the expansion came out on a weird day, whatever, more power to them. Because at least you knew you were getting a product that was well built and well polished. Nowadays, it feels like Activision has a chokehold over what the hell happens. Not really a good thing. Anywho, those are just the 3 points I wanted to discuss. I wanted to kind of keep it short and not really rant on for about 40 minutes about all the things that I think are not too great. Obviously, there are other things, chief among them the Mythic Plus fiasco, but that, on the other hand, to add a side note, at least with the Mythic Plus thing, people getting Mythic Plus 16 underrots and stuff like that, because if you had done a Mythic Plus the week before Legion ended, you would actually get a piece of gear. When that happened, Blizzard was like, hey, you know, we're gonna take that gear away from you. We apologize, but that's not how it was meant to work. They did something extremely important, which was they communicated with us. With all the stuff that's been happening with the war fronts, the easy access to 340 gear that can Titan Forge as high as 380, not a peep out of their Twitter or their Facebook. And on an extra side note, if you're an enchanter, I would actually recommend you do Warfronts. Veiled Crystals, which are the purple crafting item for disenchanting epic gear, is actually really, really easy to grind out because all of the pieces of gear that come out of a Warfront are at least epic. Anyways, thank you all for watching. Let me know down in the comments what you think of the expansion so far. Do you think it's doing well? Is it to your liking? Did you play, you know, way back in vanilla, and do you think that, obviously compared to vanilla, a lot of things have become easier? Do you think that the expansion's gonna do good in the long run, or do you think if they have more issues like they're having right now, that it could be one of their biggest, or one of their first ever major flops? Potentially even worse than the Pandas of Miss Pandaria. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching. Let me know down in the comments, again, what you think of the expansion. I've been your humble hostess, Aubrey from Urban Gaming. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscription button and click the little bell to give you those little notifications of when I upload. And do check out my description. I now have a Patreon page. I just put out a video a little while ago telling you all about it. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great Saturday or Sunday.